Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to Ion Radio and the Backseat Admiral. I'm John. Today, I decided to do a early morning edition of Backseat Admiral with the holiday yesterday in the United States and just my schedule in general. It was very busy, so I figured why not do it at this time and see if anyone from around the world that normally can't tune in because I do it at 3 o'clock their time can show up. So if you're not able to catch it live, well, welcome to it on replay, saved to YouTube. I'm going to go ahead and get started then. So today I'm going to be breaking down our giant sector fleet battle, 1200 points versus 1200 points, Battle of Coruscant. Hey, thank you very much. I'm glad I'm sounding good. And before that, I just threw out on our Discord, like, if you have any questions about Season 1 or this battle or any of the other backseats, just ask it and I'll cover that briefly so that there's a little bit of strategy that we're talking about here. So if you are in the chat and you have any questions about those things, Season 1 in general, the sector fleet battle, or any other topics that I've covered so far in Backseat Admiral, go ahead and ask them and then I'll cover it. So I'm going to quickly read from my phone one of the questions that we had, and I took a picture to help explain it. So Giraffasaur from our Discord asked this question. He was asking about overlapping ships and where the damage would go. So if you overlap a bunch of ships, which ship gets damaged and things like that. So let's say if you're moving speed 3 and you overlap a ship at speed 3 and then you fall back and you overlap a different ship at speed 2 and then you overlap again and you overlap 2 ships at speed 1, which of those ships is going to take damage along with yourself? And the answer is the last ship that you overlap, that is the closest. So you overlap at speed 1, that ship's not going to be damaged because the ship at distance 2 is going to be overlapped as well. So then that one becomes the one that you've last overlapped. And then at distance 1, you overlap 2 ships, which now those 2 ships are the ones that are primed and the previous 2 are not. And then you just stay where you're at, and then you measure which of the closest ships, or which of those 2 ships that you overlapped is the closest, and that's the ship that gets damaged. A lot of times I feel like this ends up being my own ships, which is frustrating, but there's really nothing that you can do about that. And the key is it's not the closest ship, it's the closest ship that you overlap. So sometimes just where the ships land, like you can just curve around a ship that you would like ram at that distance. So clicking it, if you know you're going to ram and not move, you can sometimes click your ship in a way that will not overlap your own ship and will overlap the other ship. So that's the answer to that. And then another question that was asked by Giraffosaur that then was discussed was this whole, how does the new wording for shield dials not or how does shield dials and obstruction work while drawing line of sight? Because it used to work one way, and then after 1.5 the phrasing was changed that shield dials are no longer considered in doing line of sight. So I took a few pictures, and as a few of you know that I'm currently in the process of moving, so I'm packing stuff up, so a lot of my stuff is getting packed up, so the lighting in these pictures isn't the best because I took down all my lights. But let me show you this. So if you see this picture here in the very, very bright laser line, so the laser line connects this dot and it goes through the shield dial and continues on its way. So before, in pre 1.5, this would be a clear shot because that laser line does not overlap this obstacle. I've used this a couple times in tournaments and things like that. Like, this is great. So now you can put it here and then you can have obstructed shots into you. This works usually really well with dust clouds. It's really, really cheap. Not saying it's not, but this is the way it used to work. So as long as this line does not cross this obstacle and you can go through your own shield dial to do it, then it was a clear shot. So I believe in that funny episode that Ken and I played, I don't remember the episode number, but I play like a swarm of Gazantes. Like, we went way, way back into the rules when you could field as many Gazantes as you wanted. I did this to Ken, so I landed right on top of a dust field. So no attacks from his main ship could attack me. But then I had just inched out over the obstacle with my shield dial so then I could shoot. So that's how it's written. So now it says that you should remove your shield dial to determine if obstruction takes place. And I have another photo. There. So same placement of the ship, same placement of the obstacle, but with the shield dial removed, you can now see that the line actually does go over the obstacle. And that's really what it's talking about now, is that line of sight. You can't use your shield dials to get a little bit of extra room to not be obstructed. So that's kind of the explanation I have for that. If I've completely missed what the question was, again, let me know and I can try to come up with a better explanation for it. But I believe this is what people are talking about usually when they're talking about shield dials and obstructing, because in this case the shield dial pre 1.5 would allow for a clear shot. Now, under the new definitions of the rules that the shield dials don't count, it would be obstructed. So I think that's primarily it for a lot of the questions. So I want to just talk about this giant sector fleet battle because for us it was a big production because 1,200 points is huge and a large time investment, and fleet building and designing for it are very much so different than fleet building and designing for 400 points or 200 points or 300 points because we play a lot of different point values on the channel. Yeah, so this rule is only for obstruction and not overlapping. For overlapping, your shield dials still count, so be careful because you technically need all your components on your ship if it's just sitting there at all times. So if you were to ram and overlap with your shield dial, you have to bump back still. So when designing a fleet for 1,200 points, there's different things you need to take into consideration. Certain admirals that are very good at 400 points or less become not so good during 1,200 point games and vice versa. So for example, Tarkin, he hits like this cap, Moff Tarkin, actually both Tarkins, both of them hit this cap of are they useful for their point cost at 400 points? Or, for example, a commander like Sato. Is Sato good at 400 points because you have so many extra things besides just ships that you need to buy to make Sato work? And at smaller games, Sato just gets worse and worse and worse and worse. But the larger the game goes, Sato becomes much better because now you have enough points for ships and you have enough points for squadrons, and then you can get Sato to work. Or when you consider that normally Tarkin's only handing out maybe 3 tokens per ships, but when you can hand them out to an entire fleet of 10 plus ships, then it becomes better. So when Ken and I decided to do the Battle of Coruscant, I had to come up with which commander I wanted to take. And we decided that I was going to be the Republic and obviously the Separatists. So I was looking at the commanders. And Ken and I both agreed to limit squadrons to, I believe, less than 200 points just to make the game flow better. So that, right off the bat, took out 2 commanders that I would even take into consideration, which would be Yularen and Plo Koon. Both of those commanders rely on fighters. Like, you're pouring their points directly into increasing fighter capacity and increasing basically, the accuracy with Plo Koon. So without the proportionate amount of fighters per points that you're playing, because we were only playing, 1/6 of fighter builds for total points compared to normally at this level would be 1/4, I'm getting less out of my commander than other commanders. So I took those 2 out. Now, when you compare Bale versus Tarkin, which it goes to the same thing, Bale's actually a really good commander at 400 points because you get to just dial. I think it's 5 total dials, which is great when you have 3 ships. But when you jump up to 1,200 points, those 5 dials almost mean nothing compared to the fact that I believe I was running 11 ships. So that's only, I get the same amount of use, but I don't actually get the same amount of benefit overall. My ships compared to Admiral Tarkin, who before he could be passing out tokens to 3 ships, now he's passing out tokens to 11 ships, so he's exponentially better at larger games. So I decided to really look. There's only 3 commanders that I could really choose from: Obi-Wan, Luminara, and Tarkin. I'd been playing a lot of Tarkin off camera, just to get spat timing and things down, so I didn't really want to play him. I had ideas for Obi-Wan, which you'll see in Season 3, and I hadn't really played that much Luminara, so I decided let's play Luminara for this. So that's where I started for my fleet building, and that's how I broke down how I decided which commander I would take. So let's take a look at our total fleets. And as you can see, we both have tons and tons of ships. So, this is the largest match that I think is on the internet, pretty much is this much. Let's jump to this. So this is my flagship. It is a Venator 2, and it has my Admiral Luminara on it. And I decided that she is going to be my fighter pusher. I have some squadrons, we'll get to them at the end. But because this is a dedicated fighter pusher, I just decked it out to be pretty cheap and push fighter, so boosted comms, so I could drop it in the middle of the table, have range 5 on either side, and we could reach most of the table then. Flight controllers to add that extra dice. I really think that GAR needs flight controllers because most of their ships have red dice, which I don't even consider to be actual dice. So most of their fighters I see as being 2, so flight controllers brings them up to like 4 dice that are actual dice. And then electric... I just choked on my own spit. Electronic countermeasures, so that if I start getting attacked, I can guarantee to use my brace and hopefully survive then with my Venator on my flagship. Moving on to the next ship, it is one of my 3 other Venators. It is the Resolute Title, and I decked out all my Venators to be pretty much the same. I have Clone Navigation Officer for token passing shenanigans. I have Clone Gunners because guaranteeing an accuracy against ships is fantastic. Intensify Firepower. I put this on the Resolute so that I could guarantee get a token if I did a Confire, so then I can generate the Intensify Firepower every single turn. What I did not think about until I was midway playing it is normally I use Resolute and Tarkin so that I can also use Spat. Because like I said, I was playing a lot of Tarkin. So that doesn't really work when I need to spend like 3 concentrate fire tokens off the ship all at the same time. And I forgot that Tarkin gives me the token at the beginning, which is usually what I use to do Intensify. So this is like a 1 spat and done type of ship. So that's my bad, but nothing I can really do about it. So the rest of the upgrades are ordnance pods, because if you come up against fighters, getting free flak against them is amazing, especially when my squadron ball isn't that big and I might need to just clear it out. And then I have XI7s. XI7s work very, very well with the Spat and Clone Gunners, because Clone Gunner says block your brace, and then XI7 says your redirect doesn't matter. And then if you're using it with an ignition attack, it means then that your salvo doesn't matter. So if you're attacking something like a Munificent or a Acclimator, none of your tokens matter. So have fun, redirecting one and then eating all of the damage. So that's kind of the idea behind the ship. And if we jump over, I have 2 more that are decked out exactly the same. Also, from a design perspective for big games like this, I like keeping all my ships very, very streamlined and like same upgrades on everything. So then I don't have to think, is that ship over on that side of the table, this one, or is that one over there, that one? I just know all of my stuff is generic. They're all equipped the same. It's like they just came right out of the shipyard, equipped the same way, so then I don't have to think about it. Because there's so many activations, there's so many things going on. Each turn takes an hour plus. The less I have to spend mentally thinking about which ship is which means that I can then focus on the important parts of the game. So moving on to all of my Acclimators. All of my Acclimators are equipped exactly the same. They are all Acclimator 2s. They all have gunnery teams. They all have early warning systems. They all have assault proton torpedoes. And they all have swivel-mounted batteries. In a big game like this, there's going to be areas that are very target saturated, and you want to be able to throw dice downrange at them. This allows me to do that. It allows me to obstruct my shots coming into my front, which eliminates a lot of salvo, because a lot of salvo is just 1 red dice at long range. So you can't salvo me. Swivel allows me to try to trigger my assault proton torpedoes at long range with the black dice from my sides. In gunnery teams means that I can shoot 2 targets out the front with it. So this is a pretty cheap ship, and you can throw a lot of damage out of it. So I have 3 of these, all equipped the same. Then we jump into the Peltas, and the Peltas are just here for support. They're just here to pass out shields, pass out tokens, and be activations. So I have a Pelta Transport. Not worried about using it for squadrons. So it has projection experts to pass shields to my bigger Venators and things like that. Commsnet to pass tokens, because tokens fuel the whole economy. And then I like this upgrade, TB73, giving me an additional evade, allows it to keep alive longer. So it just makes it so then you don't really want to attack it. Then the next one is equipped the exact same, except it has a different title. It has the FB88 in case I need to change my dial and pass a different token. These are really just support ships. And if you get close, then they throw dice at you. But they're just support ships, and with Loom, you attack it. I go, oh, I'll just spend an evade, cancel out a dice. Here, someone else can regen one of their tokens that's more important. And then I have 3 counselors, and they're equipped again exactly the same, just so then I don't have to play mental gymnastics to keep up with what's going on. It has Link Turbo Laser Towers, keeping it simple. They're just activations, they throw dice, they can do flak, they're great little ships. So now let's jump into my fighters. So I brought with kind of the standard set of fighters that go with Loom, which are Ahsoka, Anakin, Axe, and Kickback, because they all kind of synergize together. You attack one, I generate a token. You attack another one, I generate a different token on a ship. I brought Plo because he gives my generics counter, and it's just fun. For generics, I brought 3 V19s. Nothing special. This is just to keep my aces alive a little bit longer, and if you don't kill them, then they get to move in and hit you hard. So, nothing crazy with that, but the build idea was to have Loom pretty much in the center of the table on her flagship, commanding my Squadron Ball. My Squadron Ball is basically designed to move in, try to lock down your fighters so they can't do anything, and then regenerate tokens on my ships around me. I have my Venator core fleet that is just going to spat things to death. I have my acclimators that are going to just line up, go slow, and be gunships to launch black dice. And then my counselors just somewhere in between, throwing red dice, taking activation slots. That was my fleet concept. I'm going to look at chat, see if there's any questions, and then we'll jump to Ken's fleet. So, I don't know how to say your name. Black asks, how come Ken is still playing with you and still staying positive when you are mopping the floor with him in every game you play? Yes. Now, Ken actually is just really good at playing games, and he just enjoys playing games, and I appreciate him being my friend because he's one of my best friends. He's just a positive person to begin with. He sees the game as a fun way to interact with other people and to experience having big ships on the table. If you go back to my first Backseat Admiral, I talk about where people get joy out of playing games, and you have to understand how you get joy from playing the games. And Ken is a theme guy, so as long as we have cool themed ships on the table and we're blasting each other apart, he's happy with that. For me, I get joy out of building and designing fleets. As long as I can build and design a fleet and try to get something to go off, I'm happy playing. So the combination of that together, either one of us, winning or losing, doesn't really matter for us on the channel, because we're just there enjoying the different aspects of how we enjoy playing the game. And then, oh, I hate salvos against me. Yeah, salvos have really changed the idea of the game because they overheat defense tokens really fast, and I'm still like working on it, especially when you play like one of the Rebel or Imperial fleets and they have salvo put on with defense tokens and defense retrofits and things like that. And you have to figure out that extra bit of damage that you normally don't have to consider from those ships. It just, the math in the game very much changes. Okay, so here's Ken's fleet, and it looks like an awesome separatist fleet. He basically did the same thing I did. You just have a bunch of each of the ships. So let's take a look at his commander, Martuk. Martuk is probably the best CIS commander there is. because it doesn't matter if you're doing fighters or if you're doing ships, he still works. And he just allows you to add a red dice to any attack against a hull zone with a shield. That's primarily his main thing. This is his flagship that he has him on. He has him on a Recusant Light Destroyer. It has Wat Tambor to help keep it alive, Ordnance Experts, Reserved Hangar Decks, Assault Proton Torpedoes because it has black dice, Link Turbo Laser Towers because it's great, and then Gillis Aegis, which is the discard your redirect to be able to get your shields moved around, which is really there just to keep it alive. So this is kind of a defensive build. He kind of did the same thing that I did with my flagship. Make it a defensive build, make it still useful for the game, but it's a defensive build to keep your Admiral alive for as long as possible in this game, because the longer you can keep him alive, the more red dice that you would be able to add to your fleet. His next ship is a Providence class carrier. This one has Rune Hakau, early warning systems, intensify firepower, point defense ion cannons, the invincible, and thermal shields. Rune is really good at stealing tokens and then having concentrate tokens on himself, specifically for powering intensify firepower. Anytime that I build a CIS list that I'm going to be using any of the fleet commands, he definitely goes into the officer seat, because then I don't really need to worry about passing myself tokens. I can just have tokens on other ships, steal them, that are concentrate fire, and then he has 2 guaranteed uses. You're probably only going to need him for 3, maybe 4 turns, so you start him on turn 2, 3, 4. If you haven't won by that point, you can then gauge to see where you are, and you can just discard it on turn 5. Or you get another token. So you just need to give him a Confire token with a Commsnet once. That's powering it for turn 2. Then Rune can steal a token. That's 2. And then Rune has 2 more tokens than a discard, and you've done everything you need for the whole game for using Intensify. I really like this build. Point defense keeps you alive against fighters and close range attacks. Thermal shields decked on top of early warning systems can reduce a lot of dice. I actually throw very few dice at Ken, so thermal shield is not very useful, especially because I'm using add effects, so that's how you get around thermal shield being very, very powerful. His other Providence is a Providence class Dreadnought. It has Intel Officer, Ordnance Experts, Ordnance Pods. Ken and I think alike. How to kill squadrons. Just do it on a free attack when you're focusing down ships. Point defense ion cannons, XI7s. This is the same thing I was talking about. If you can, especially for clone era ships, if you can target a brace with an accuracy, XI7s take care of the redirect, and then the damage just gets punched right in. And then Link Turbo Laser Towers, because if you're throwing red dice specifically with Martuk, you want rerolls. Then he has another Recusant Light Destroyer. This one has Intel Officer, Sensor Team, which allows you to try to generate an accuracy. I'm not sold on this one, but it's not my choice. Reserve Hangar Deck to, if you see, basically all of his fighters are swarm, and you can get a ton of them back with how many reserve hangar decks he brings. Assault Concussion Missiles, Swivel Mount, so you can throw that long distance, and then Patriot's Fist, because if you're just making one attack, you guarantee the accuracy pretty much. With Sensor Team, and you're getting extra dice thrown in. It's a good combo. I like this ship. Then he has a Munificent. It has Battle Droid Reserves, which is good for trying to keep it alive. Reserved Hangar Deck, which you can regenerate your Swarm Fighters, and the stapled on Link Turbo Laser Tower. The next ship is Munificent Comms Frigate with disposable capacitors and Link Turbo Laser Towers. For 1 turn, you get to throw your blue dice at long range. Then he has a hard sell. I think actually he might have 2 of those. Or he might have 2 of this one. I forget. Either way, he has 2 of the 1 Munificents. Then he has a hard sell with Teaks, Commsnet, and Foreman's Labor. And Teaks, you can take a command dial, take a token with them, and then throw the token away to another ship, which works pretty well. Then he has a hard sell with Parts Resupply, a hard sell with Reserved Hangar Link Turbo Laser Towers, and Beast of Burden. This is a battle one, so battles refit hard cells are really good with Martu, because then you have a red dice out the side. You can shoot with that first, get an extra red with Martuk, and then you can shoot out your front for 3, and then hopefully you still have more and you can hit him with another one. And then he has a hard cell with reserved hanger deck and Link Turbo Laser Towers. So something that Ken and I talked about afterwards is I went in with the idea of designing the fleet with everything being the same. And Ken went in with the idea of, I want to design lots of different ships that are cool. And afterwards, he's like, I should have just done standardized ships. So I think that's something we had a long conversation about, which is just standardized ships in these bigger games, because you're going to be playing for hours and not having to think about which hard cell has a title or which hard cell has an officer. Takes a lot of mental strain off of you. So probably moving forward, if we were to do big battles, you'll probably see more ships from both of us that are exactly the same. And then we go into fighters, and Ken brought a huge swarm of fighters. He has Flak and he has Dis, both of the Tri-Fighter aces, which are just absolute jerks. He has both of the Vulture aces, DFS, and the Halcor prototypes, which are also jerks. Then he has 6 Tri-Fighters, which are annoying to try to take down, and 6 Vulture droids. So this is a huge, huge fighter. We both said that we were going to do less than 200, and Ken almost hit 200. And then if you add reserve hanger decks on top of it, it's a lot of fighters. There was so many fighters that had to be taken out, but it looms a generation of tokens on her own aces, make it a little bit easier to take out fighters. So that is it for fleets. I'm going to look at chat, and then we're going to talk about deployment and how this game went down and what we were thinking throughout the game. So, have you tried Black Pelta with Reactive Gunner? To me, it feels like a flotilla with teeth that bites you when you shoot it, dig it with, yes. So yes, I have played that, and you're probably going to see some of that in Season 3. That is actually one of my favorite Peltas with Reactive Gunner, but I just didn't have the points to fit it into this fleet, because if I were to have put it in, I would have to be dropping fighters probably, and I was already at the very limit of what I think was a viable squadron ball. So if I were to have to drop like 2 or 1 of the torrents, I just wasn't really going to be happy with what my fighter ball was. But I considered doing that. One of my friends that plays at both the local stores I actually go to, Jack, he has this really, really mean list. And the Peltas seem like the easiest thing to attack, but they're reactive gunnery, and he has intensify firepower. So it's like, boom, 2 damage against you, guaranteed on a salvo, which sucks. His fleet is very swarm-based, and I think in one turn he completely melted my Venator pretty much, because it was like 2 damage, 2 damage, 2 damage, 2 damage, 2 damage, 2 damage, 2 damage. Then it was my turn, and I'm like, I attack you, 2 damage, then I attack that other ship, 2 more damage. And it's like, when do I use my defense tokens? Do I really want to brace 2 damage to 1? Like, it's not a good feeling. Or 3 damage to 2 damage, still a horrible feeling. So yes, I really do enjoy reactive gunnery Peltas. Next question. I think it's funny how well thermal shields work against Galactic Civil era ships and how bad it works against its own era. That is very true. But that's because Trench, who is the guy that, uses thermal shields, he was a visionary and looking toward the future, and that's why he constantly got blown up by Anakin and Obi-Wan in the Clone Wars series, because he was envisioning battles that were to be, not the battle that he currently was in. I really like the inclusion of thermal. So I'm going to talk about that just for a second. So the inclusion of thermal and the changing of prices for most of the defensive retrofits actually, I think, makes defensive retrofit slot useful again, because before it was the ECM slot, because no matter what you wanted to have ECM, because you could just guarantee ignore one of their accuracies every single turn. With ECM now needing the engineering to power it, it makes you think about it. So you can still use it guaranteed once per game, which honestly, that's pretty much all you really need, is to guarantee use your brace one turn to keep your ship alive. And then if you can give it an engineering to keep it using, cool, that's cool. But otherwise, you don't need to. It's just that one time. A lot of the ships, I think, benefit a lot from Early Warning System. Early Warning System has always been a good card. It just was so overshadowed by ECM. So now those two cards, like, do I want ECM? Do I want Early Warning System? Like, it's a hard pick. Especially with salvo, ECM can just knock out a dice on every single salvo. Not ECM. Early Warning System can knock out a dice on every single salvo attack, so that may mean that their defensive tokens like salvo don't really even exist. And then with the changing of the wording between XI7s and Projection Experts, is I think the card, I still don't really use it, but it's back into the realm. Now you have 3, and for the Clone Wars factions, you have 4 defensive retrofits you can actually look at now. Do you want ECM, because that's good against ships that have accuracies? Do you want thermal shields, because that's really good against ships that have large dice pools? The Galactic Civil War era, ISDs. So I like that there's options. So options for the game is good for the game. Okay, so there's another one. I like thermal shields. I know some think they are OP, but honestly, you have to think really hard when you should and should not use them, as you have to shred a brace. For me, I still 70% take ECM. Yeah, see, that's what I mean. Like, it gives you options, and I like that there are more options for the game. Hold on one second. And what it does, thermal shields, what it does is it forces a change in gameplay. Before, you were able to just roll in with an ISD2, get into medium range, and here's 8 dice and you're dead. What thermal shields does is it changes the way you have to play the game, the way you have to think about the game. You can't just one huge strike in. You need smaller attacks. You need that support ship to come in to try to exhaust tokens first. Like, you want to give them choices. Thermal shield also is an upfront cut damage in half, technically, but then you play someone like Ken who just rolls straight red dice. Spoiler, there's a game in Season 3 Season 2? I don't even know what season we're on. This is into Season 1. Season 2 is coming out. There's a game in Season 2 that I knock out like all of Ken's like black and blue dice and leave him with a handful of red, and he does more damage than he does dice rolled, because, you know, he only rolls doubles, and it's frustrating. I'm like, man, I wish I just kept my brace, because if I had ECM, I would have been able to half all this damage, but it is what it is. Okay, so let's take a look at the battlefield for this giant battle. Here it is. When you're playing sector fleets that are this big, from the sides, you're distance 3 from the sides instead of distance 5, so you have more space to deploy. And we almost didn't have enough space to deploy. So, as the game, like, deployment went out, I did what I told you guys I envisioned from the beginning, which was to drop the flagship right in the middle, surrounded with fighters, so then I can move my fighters and my flagship to either side as needed. I figured that was a good spot for it. Peltas were there to support it, so then I kind of like spaced them out so then they could toss tokens toward either side of the table. And then we just started building firing lines. And I overloaded one of the side with all my Venators because I could spat attack out of them. So my idea was I was going to turn them through the battlefield. And like here, we'll do the mouse. So they were going to come through the battlefield in the middle toward the other side. And then I can get that front shot downrange, and then I can spat him out the side and do that. And then I built this wall of death here. Now, like I was telling you guys, the acclimators, as long as you feed them targets, they can throw red dice, and then the swivel will allow me to throw black dice, and then hopefully I can trigger my ATPs. And what's nice about that is then I can just focus on one command the entire game for this entire side. This whole side right here, I don't have to think about. They do an turn one navigate, so I can adjust my speed as I need and just slow roll in, and then just straight concentrate fire, because I'm going to be using my gunnery team every single turn if I can. And if I can't, I'm just adding an extra dice, and that dice will be a black dice, which is another chance for me to trigger ATP or APT. Then my little guys in the middle. This is what, 6 inches pretty much of game space, and if you fly into it, that's like 6+ dice with a guaranteed hit with intensified firepower and link turbo. Like, even my red dice can actually get hits for that. Ken's deployment, he deployed all of his fighters in the middle here off of his hard cell, and then he kind of spaced it out. He has his flagship with a bunch of support ships and a Providence kind of like being its tank over to the side here. The other Providence on the other side. We are playing Asteroid Tactics, which I'm going to actually just take a break and jump into that. So I gave Ken 3 horrible choices for this game, because I was first player, and you actually in bigger games want to go second, because the same thing, it exponentially makes the objective cards better for second player, just like how certain commanders are better for second player. So like if you think about surprise attack is already a good objective, because I get to put your flagship down. Well, just imagine if you have like 13 ships and I'm like, you know what, put your flagship right there, and then I'm going to gun it down. That's fantastic. And then raid, like I can raid all of your ships all at once. Just knock out all of your stuff. Here's no squadrons. Here's no concentrate fire. Here's no engineering. Like, it makes raid useful, because do you really have enough token generation with a fleet to be able to keep 13 ships going, or 12 or 10 ships? Probably not. And then my next one is Asteroid Tactics, and this just allows me to try to eat down people's fighters with Exarchoths, and then I can land my own ships and fighters on it to regain defense tokens, and I just ignore asteroids, which hate me. The last one is Infested Fields, and this is what card Ken actually chose, and it worked out better. I think the best option out of all 3 of these is Asteroid Tactics. Ken chose Infested Fields, and we deployed it, so then he had one on either side that he was trying to land on and get the token, and then I had all mine on my side. So turn 1, it was determined who had it. I would get extra 15 points, and then I get to move it. And I get to move those obstacles every single turn, which then I can just move them in front of the ships. Someone's going to hit it. The entire table's a straight line of ships. Like, I just move an obstacle to where I want it to be hit. And here's an asteroid, or here's a debris field. Works pretty good for me. So let's exit that one out, and we'll go back to deployment. So that's deployment, and then we jump into turn 1. Everything just kind of slow rolls forward, and this is just preparing. So in my mind, I am second player, and I have an additional activation. So I need to time my attacks so that I can get the most benefit out of them. And the longer I wait, because I'm second player, the better my Alpha Strike, I think, can be. Because the more turns that I give for Ken to get his Martuk off at long range, the more benefit his commander has. So I need to be able to maneuver my ships into a position that they're outside of long range for this next turn, to deny him the ability to use Martuk for longer. and that's why I very much slow rolled it in. There's really not much else to talk about. As you can see, this obstacle got moved here, this obstacle got moved here, and now this guy I need to move into his fighter swarm because I want him to choose between, does he move into my flak field and into my fighters, or does he sit there and then I get free attacks on him? His fighters only have 3 health. If I roll perfectly, which won't happen, with Exergoth, I could just kill out all of his fighters. So I'm trying to now move the obstacles into the center to allow his ships to land on him, free damage, and then allow the Exergoth to get into range to just do free damage for me. So that was my thinking with this. And this gun line's just waiting for things to come into range, and it's just going to try to saturate fire. If I can kill Martuk off early, then I deny him a lot of red dice for all of his different attacks, and that's kind of my goal. And like, my commander's pretty safe out here, so my objective was to minimize the amount of attacks, like always, minimize the amount of attacks that Ken could take against me while putting him in a poor position that then I can start deleting ships, which then makes my activation advantage even more so, because if I can wipe out one side of ships, then I can just activate all those for free, not take any damage on the other side, and then activate all those after Ken has moved into range. So let's jump on to the next turn. And you can see my ships are still going. I have tons of spat tokens out here, hoping that these ships down here are going to move into it, and then we'll just obliterate them with spat and Clone Gunner and XI7. Like, I can just melt right through a shield and a specific hull zone. I took a huge gamble on this turn, and it was because of where ships were and the ranges that they were, which is going into what I talked about before. And I dropped to speed 0 on every single one of my CR70s. And the reason why I did that was it was then like basically a free pass token, because Ken wasn't in range to do anything against them. Because he wasn't in range to do anything against them, they weren't in danger for this turn. And on the next turn, if he chooses to shoot at them, go ahead. You're probably not going to be able to kill a CR70 straight through at long range, even with Martuk. So most of the ships that are on this side of the game board have 2, maybe 3 dice out the front. And then if you add in Martuk, that's 4. And then you add in Ken's Lucky Rolling, and that's probably 5 damage, which would leave the ship on 1 hull. And then I can just activate it next, shoot with it, and then I moved it, and I still get to use it. So my gamble in my head was, if they stay still, you will move into range. And if you shoot them, then you're taking out one of my least valuable assets, and hopefully then that I can trade up and kill one of his bigger ships. As you can see here, our fighter ball engaged. The Exergoth has his fighters in range, so our fighters engaged, shot at each other, and then I'm waiting for the fighter squadron phase to start, and then the Exergoth are going to try to chew up and finish as many of his fighters as possible. Let's see if there's anything else I want to take note of in this turn. We're just chip damaging in long range black dice, getting added in with acclimators, and these Venators just preparing to do battle. So let's jump to the next turn. And this next turn, as you can see, the Venator combined has wiped out a lot of Ken's forces actually in the middle, and it left this whole flank over here with the Munificent, the Providence, and the Hard Cell very, very weak, but also me very, very weak, because we were all in range and all salvoing and all having fun over there. I kept leaving things on 1 health, which allowed him to get an extra attack and extra intensify firepower off with his Providence this round, which was annoying. But that's because of early warning systems, which goes back to what was better. Was early warning system or was ECM better? And the answer in this case was very much so early warning system, because it blocked so many different attacks. Ken was able to take out one of my CR70s because no defense tokens, and it just died. And then I took out that hard cell. And as you can see now, my acclimators are just going to gun down this entire line in front of them, because between these 3 acclimators, I get 6 attacks with gunnery teams. And that's going to be a lot, because I just choose 2 ships, and that's 3 attacks into that ship, and then 3 attacks into another ship, and that's going to overload whatever defense tokens. It doesn't even matter what ship. That type of firepower into a ship would be extremely powerful. And then we're going to just keep spatting over here to try to wipe out this, and then Loom's just commanding fighters and things like that right in the middle here. She's just doing her thing. She's just existing on the battlefield. Last turn. Then this is where all the dominoes kind of just fell between this turn and this turn. Is activation. Ken would activate, I would activate, and we just would trade a ship here and there back and forth as we did damage to each other, because the previous turn ships, all the ships' attacks kind of set up what would happen. So Ken would activate, I would kill something, or Ken would kill one of mine, and it would just go back and forth. That his Munificent had a really, really good turn of shooting and just melted that Venator. And then all my ships did their thing. And I think that is the last picture we took. Since we did Backseat Admiral now, I've started to learn. I'm taking in pictures so then I can talk about how the in state ended. We agreed that because his Munificent had 1 health left and I had all my fighters still in activation range and he had no redirect, that it would guarantee die on turn 6 regardless of what it did. So we said that it would trade out my Pelta, which also was pretty much dead at that point. His little hard cell that's left here would be killed as well, because at the end of this, my ship would have been spatting it, and the ship would have been right on top of it, and it's just too much firepower. So at the end of the game, we just decided that we would say that it was a clean wipe of Ken's fleet on my side, and he would get the Pelta in exchange for that. So this game was a lot of fun, and it took a lot of time to record. Anytime that you play a big game like this, you have to be prepared for it to be a very long, very, very long day. I think we started setting up around noon. We took a break in the middle. I don't remember if we actually got lunch or not. I don't remember. I think we did, but it was a long day, and I think final ships were cleaned up around 10 o'clock. So it ended up being like 10 total hours that we were hanging out playing this game. Editing it took a long time as well. I think it took 12 to 15 hours, because it's 3 games put together. You could even see it. It was like a fighter game in the middle. It had a gunship game on one side, and then it had a Venator Tarkin basically list spat out the other. And it just took a lot of time. So you guys can keep asking questions. I'm going to look at chat and read what I've missed, and then we'll come back again. Let's see, where did I leave off? Yeah, that's where I learned it. Gavin is talking about it. It's fun to tell his friend that runs ISD2 to lose all of his red dice and roll the max 4 damage. That's what I should have done in the game that you will see eventually. But I learned my lesson, because, 4 red dice turning into an accuracy and 7 damage just stinks. But hey, a bunch of accuracies and less damage is better, so keep the blue dice. I personally think the deployment of Ken's fleet should have been more focused on one side. I think he was all over the place and couldn't focus without being attacked from all sides. Am I wrong? That's pretty much what I said. Roger, I would agree with you on that. I had a very focused plan of what all of my ships were doing from the beginning, and I grouped them into basically different squadrons inside of my fleet. And this is no offense to Ken, so we've also talked about it. He spread his stuff out very much so. I like focusing in all my ships very close. That's why if you actually watch a lot of our games, I ram my own ships way more because I value the fact that they're very close together, more so than Ken does. I would rather my ship ram into it and both of them gunning down one ship than my ships to be spread apart and one not being able to fire. I can't remember who went first. I think Ken was at a disadvantage activation-wise. Yes, I had one more activation than Ken, so being second player, then I could do 2 ships at the end of each round. Those acclimators are serious assault ships compared to the Munificent, though the Muni is highly maneuverable. The Munificent is very maneuverable, but maneuverability doesn't really matter in 1200-point games because the entire line of the mat is covered, so you can maneuver, but you're still going to be shot. And then we're just talking about who was first player. I think Imp's first Rebels in a 1200-point game would have been a blast. More options for fleet building. Didn't get me wrong, I love the Clone Wars era, but right now Civil War has way more options. It does. But we got this really cool mat, and the clone factions are brand new, so that's why we decided to do the Battle of Coruscant. Prior to starting the channel, Ken and I did a giant 1200-point match, and I'm trying to remember if we had multiple admirals or if we just had one. I think we had multiple admirals. I think we built 2 600-point fleets for Rebels and Imperials. I was Sloane and had like my normal Sloane murder TIE interceptor ball, and he had an Akbar list, and then he had, who was the other one? Sato. So he had like this cool like combination of like some of his ships were just launching red dice, and other ships were launching dice and they were turning into black, and that didn't take as long because we weren't filming, and that was years and years ago. But yeah, I'm not saying that you'll never see that on the channel. It might happen in a couple seasons. I think they should up the base meta from 400 to at least 500 points. Seriously, with so many ship options out there, it makes sense. Just keep fighters min to 135 points. So, as much as I really, really like playing bigger battles, because specifically with the clone era ships recently, I've discovered that my fleet builds need about 20 extra points. So if we went up to 420, we would be cooking. And I would have enough points for everything. But I think what's nice about the 400-point limit is that it limits what you can do, and then you have to make hard choices. And being someone that thinks that a lot of the game enjoyment and a lot of the game play is actually before you ever hit the table, and it's all list building and things like that, I think that keeping it tighter and having lots of hard choices when you're building the fleet is important. Not that to say that I don't like 500 points, but 500 points, an extra 100 points of game adds still a significant amount of time. It means that you can have a full 400 points plus of ships and then fighters on top of it, so then the games just drag out a little bit longer. So I think that's about it for my thoughts on this game. It was fun. We were excited to be able to do something like this, and this is kind of like what our thought pattern for the seasons are. And the seasons aren't necessarily it's mainly for us for internal planning, because it's way easier to say, hey, let's work on Season 1, Episode 3, what fleet are you building, compared to where we were before, where we had about 10 episodes post-production because of when things were being released. So we had like episodes 34 through 44. Some of them were 1.5, some of them weren't 1.5, some of them had release ships, and some of them were waiting, so it became confusing. So we decided to just simplify it. Season 1 through 10, and every 10th episode of a season, we're going to do something big, we're going to do something special, we're going to do something different that makes it a finale. And I think this was a fantastic finale for a great first season. So, give me a sec, I just have to pull up my phone, and I want to talk about what my favorite fleets that I flew for Season 1 were. And you guys can tell me what you think your favorite fleets that I flew were as well. Or Ken's fleets, but Ken's not here talking, so. Okay, so I think my favorite new fleet that I flew was the episode that you guys just recently saw, and that was the episode that I flew TF-1726. It was the first time I flew them. I really enjoyed that fleet. I'm probably going to start building more fleets with him. The problem, like, was the Backseat Admiral that you saw last week is the only way to get raid is really surprise attack and B2s, so it's limited in its maximum firepower. Another admiral that you'll probably see me playing more of is Plo. He plays very much so into my playstyle, especially with Y-Wing spam. Y-Wings have always been one of my favorite fighters throughout forever. And you can see that I've brought complete Y-Wing spam to tournaments, and being that weird person that brings a weird fleet to like LVO and things like that with it. And it worked pretty well. And I think that Plo just allows me to do what I've been thinking about for 2 years with the Rebels way better in the GAR. So I have a couple new ideas that I want to play with that. And then, of course, my Sown list, you guys got to see it in its full glory. I think those are my 3 favorite fleets. My least favorite fleet would probably have been my Rebel list that I played Dodonna with the E-Wings. I think that a lot of that has to do with, though, I didn't deploy well. And that's why it's not my favorite. So I say that's my least favorite list of Season 1, and my favorite list is probably my Plo list. So there you have it. If you have a matchup that you like, comment down the comments, and I'll respond. I'm going to check chat, and then I'll probably do a quick wrap-up. I have a few announcements and a few questions that I would like to give you guys as an audience, and then get feedback from you guys on it. So can you guys help me convince my friend to start taking APTs instead of ACM? That depends. And I think both of them have a place, and you have to build an entire list around both of the concepts. I personally prefer APTs because that's an extra damage that you can just get in, and it's a face-up, so that's great, and you can go right through shields with it. But ACM can do some serious damage once you deplete shields. Like, small ships absolutely hate ACM as well, and if you can build around it, it can be just as good. But I just personally prefer APT. I know Ken has always been a fan of ACM, and you'll see him use it a lot more, and then I forget that he has it, and then I'm taking way extra shield damage on either side. So they're both good. I personally think APT is better, Gavin. Okay, so quick question out to you guys. I've put it out to our Patreon, and I've put it out to our Discord, and I'm just gonna tell you guys right now. Ken and I are in a BattleTech project idea that we have, so we would like for you guys to help give us some feedback on it. So if you guys could comment below or send it into our BattleTech Discord link, a pilot name, a mech that pilot wants to pilot, preferably a heavy mech, and then we have a second option for a medium mech because other ideas, and then you can choose a faction, a planet that they come from, and a backstory. All those are optional. So basically all that we really need is a good pilot name and a type of mech that's heavy that you want to use. As long as it's not like a hero or a custom mech, it's just like a standard stock mech from any of the eras, go for it. Our next little bit of announcement is that this coming week, we're not going to actually start Season 2 just yet. We're taking a 1-week break from the seasons. Ken has something very special that he's been working on. He's actually been working on it for a long time, and we finally got it recorded and put up. And what that is it's going to be an AI match. I know a lot of people, especially through the pandemic and everything like that, have been looking for an AI. And Ed, one of our Discord members, I believe is his name, he has an AI system, and it's pretty good. And Ken has actually participated in campaigns against the AI system in the past, and has really enjoyed it, and he wanted to bring you guys a special episode that he demonstrates how the AI system works, and a quick interview with the designers so that you guys can do that on your own. And we think it's really, really a cool game, and that's going to be this Friday's release. Following by the Friday after that will be another... It's going to be the start of Season 2. We're very excited for Season 2. We've just continued what we're doing, and we're going to continue doing what we're doing. We're going to do standard episodes, flipping back and forth who is different commanders, and then we got another big event planned for you at the end of Season 2 that we're very excited to show to you guys. With next week not being one of the season episodes, I'm actually going to skip Backseat Admiral next week. The main reason for that is I'm in the process of moving. So with the way work is and with packing, I'm probably going to be packing most of my stuff up that I would be doing this with. So I'm going to look back at chat and see where we're at. Let's see, I love the Plo Koon list. Not sure if it was yours or Ken's. Ken and I both have a Plo Koon list, and both of them are really cool, so you should go back and figure out which one's best, but it's mine. Y-Wing Spam's awesome. Y-Wing Spam! I believe Ken uses ARCs. I prefer Y-Wings. Another one, is Luminama Commander underrated? No. If you underestimate Loom's gonna kill you. And a lot of times just using one token and then refreshing the other ones is very, very good, especially in the world of Clone Wars era, that there's lots of small packages of damage, so you're really probably only going to be using one token, and then you can just keep using tokens back and forth. Those accuracy dice help out a lot, yeah. Plo Koon is an amazing commander. He basically just guarantees the damage to hit the same hull zone every single time as long as they have one accuracy, or you can overheat their other stuff, which I really enjoy. Okay, so I want to thank everyone that has joined me for this early morning edition of Backseat Admiral. I appreciate it, and I'm glad I was able to do it so people that normally in different time zones could watch it. We actually have a huge following around the world, not just the United States, which with schedules it becomes hard to do live audience type stuff. So in the future, let me know if there's a specific time that you want to see Backseat Admiral. Put it in the comments. Big shout out always to our Patreons. They've helped support us. We have a bunch of upgrades that are coming that you'll see directly into Season 2. You'll notice them right away. We think that they're small upgrades, but they're going to have a big impact on our production value. And I will catch you later. If you haven't already joined our Discord, join our Discord. You can come talk to Ken and me directly. And thank you very much for watching the video. I'm John, and this has been Ion Radio.